in Russia this summer and said that people were just, and for those, I speak Russian and been to Soviet Union and then post, I mean, suddenly it's not, you're no longer a rock star now, apparently, if you're American and you're on the streets of Moscow, like we're used to, people my age. She said people were coming up to her saying, what are you doing? Why you and the Germans have caused all of this? You got all these rebels in Ukraine, you organized them secretly in Kiev. And it was kind of, but now listening to you, it's like, that's actually not that far off, it sounds like. I mean, we didn't organize them, but basically we kind of told them, yeah, go ahead, because we're going to help you, right? Is that,
yeah.
Okay.
Well, let me make a couple points, very important points. With regard to my response to the gentleman who's directly behind you about nationalism, this is Russian nationalism coming to the fore. And a lot of what you see in the American case is American nationalism coming to the fore. You've all heard the famous saying or infamous saying, my country, right or wrong, right? And there are just all sorts of Russians, who are furious at the West and they're rallying around Putin. One of the reasons that many people think that Putin started this whole thing was because it so improved his standings in the polls or with the Russian public because people behaved the way you said. So people said he started this crisis for that reason. But my point to you is we should be hardly surprised. And this gets back to the China-Japan example, and this is a very scary dimension to a lot of these conflicts. But I just want to say one other thing. I've done all the research for a book on the German killing machine in World War II. I know a great deal about who the Germans killed, how they killed them, and so forth and so on. Some of you here have probably taken my course, War on the Nation State, where I talk about the origins of the Holocaust, the origins of the war on the Eastern Front, killing of Soviet POWs, and so forth and so on. But my estimate is that Hitler murdered, this is not killed in combat, Hitler murdered 22 million people. And if you look at how that war played itself out in places like Ukraine, there were people in Ukraine who sided with the Germans, and the vast majority of people, of course, fought against the Germans. But the consequences of that war are inextricably bound up with what's going on now. And the mere fact that there are, some reasonably small number, but nevertheless some fascists, real fascists, involved in Kiev just spooks the Russians like you would not believe, right? And a lot of those fascists and people on the far right hate the Soviet Union for all the obvious reasons, see the Soviet Union / Russia as largely responsible for all the killings that took place in Ukraine on the part of the Soviet Union, not the Germans, right? More history coming in. So what's going on inside Ukraine is inextricably bound up with World War II. And then the point that I tried to make to you, although I didn't develop it at length, is that NATO, which is a Cold War institution, right, is inextricably bound up with the Cold War. And from a Russian point of view, this military alliance moving up to its doorstep, which was a mortal foe for 45 years, is going to spook you. And if you have a coup in Kiev and some of the people who come to power have fascist tendencies or are fascists, however you want to define that term, it's going to have really huge consequences, right? So this is an incredibly messy situation. And in the context of all this, what we've done is doubled down. And we do not pay much attention to history because it was not a history that concerned us in any meaningful way, because it was on the eastern half of the European continent. But the potential for trouble here is just very, very great.